Okay, we're going to do Parshas Emor on 672 and 673. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is a tough one because it's apparently just filled with laws for the Kohanim. There's no stories, no Abraham, right? No Bilam. It's that you learn a moral lesson from a story of what someone does. This is pretty technical. But there is things to say because it's the Torah. The Torah has a lot of depth to it. Sometimes it's easy to see, and sometimes it's a little bit more coded. So we'll find some things here. We begin by V'omer Hashem Moshe Emor Ela Kohanim. Right? Hashem tells Moshe, tell the Kohanim. So Rashi finds this wording funny. Hashem tells Moshe, tell the Kohanim. So, right, to use such an expression, you don't have anywhere else where they begin tell the Kohanim. You have to tell the Jewish people, right? So tell the Kohanim. So what does it mean? Emor, Rashi says, V'amarta lezer gedoli malaketanim. You should go and you should have the older ones warn the younger ones. Right? What does he mean? The older Kohanim, right? The adults should prepare the younger ones for the life of being a Kohen. Right? In other words, how do you educate a Kohen to be a Kohen? Because today in our world we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, so basically to be a Kohen is, for the most part, are restrictions. That's almost everything that they have. They don't offer sacrifices, they don't eat truma, they don't do any of the things that a Kohen would normally do. When the temple's here, the temple's not here. So what do? So they basically don't do. They can't go into a cemetery, right? They can't do certain things because they're a Kohen, and because of that, so a young kid is going to say being a Kohen is a drag, it's a pain. I get nothing. What do I get out of it? You get the first Aliyah on Shabbos, right? The Kohen Aliyah, big deal. I'm not even getting my Aliyah, I'm a kid. But why, right? Why I can't? I'm going to go play ball with my friends, and the ball goes into a cemetery. I can't go get it. My other friends have to go get it. Right? It'd be like a great idea if you wanted to play ball with a bunch of kids and it was near a cemetery, and if you want to make sure that you got a home run, you just hit the ball into the cemetery and they go, honey, you can't go get it. Right? So, but the fact is that here you have a kid, he can't go get into the cemetery because of that. So how do you get a child to buy into this and to understand that this is a preparation for when the temple is here, and that this is a privilege? And there are privileges to be a Kohen, and the Jewish people are required by law to respect Kohanim and to give privileges to Kohanim. So the way you do it is by having the older Kohanim tell the younger ones. Because the best way to accomplish something is that somebody who's in the same picture, right, someone who's a part of the same thing, should talk to somebody who's also in it. So, for instance, if you have somebody who's like, for instance, God forbid somebody should get sick, but someone gets sick. What are the best ways of helping that person cope with the sickness? Is you get people who have the sickness to sit and talk to them and to tell them how you can live your life and how your world isn't falling apart. You get people who have cancer, God forbid, and that they send them to go to a group where everybody there has cancer or had cancer. And they tell them, how can you live you can live and you have hope and there's a future and we're here with you and we went through the same thing you're going through, and it makes you feel better and it makes it more real for you and it makes it that you can do it. That's why Rashi says here, what Hashem is telling Moshe is that you're not only just supposed to tell the following things to the Kohanim, you're supposed to get the Kohanim who are adults, older Kohanim, more experienced ones, to educate the younger ones. But we're not talking about just telling them the rules. You educate them to love what they're doing, to understand what they're doing, to feel what they're doing. And it's the same idea, right, with us. As I showed you, when it comes to people who have a sickness, right, you have a group do it. Why? Well, it's a similarity. They also had the sickness, and now they're telling you, and you feel better about it because you see, look at that. Here's normal people who have the same thing I have. They're alive. They're happy. They're successful. They're doing things. Now you have kids with learning disabilities. The same thing. You bring an adult with a learning disability who's successful, and you show them you can do it. Right? So it helps them. So when it comes to this thing with a Kohen, that's certainly a good thing to do, but it applies also in everyone's life in many different ways. You want to educate a child to grow up and to be a good Jew. For a kid, a lot of the things that we find attractive about Judaism, they find to be a pain. right? That they can't go with our neighbors to go eat at McDonald's, or they watch a television show or open a newspaper and they see an ad for some type of special toy you get if you buy a meal at McDonald's, and they can't go to McDonald's and they can't get the toy. That's hard for them. It's a hardship. We have trouble even understanding what's the big deal, but it's a hardship for them. So we need to educate them that when they have to discipline themselves and not do these things, that it's good, and that there's a good reason for it, and there's a big reward in it, but it's not immediate. And that's how we have to educate them, and that's what Rashi means when he explains the pasuk this way. And then it goes on, and it talks about what happens. So it says, like certain things that a Kohen has. So it says, the nefesh lo yitama biyamav. It says that a Kohen is not allowed to become tameh by coming into contact with the dead. Right? So normally coming in contact with the dead, and nobody wants to do it, but if you do, it's a big mitzvah. It's a big mitzvah to come in contact with the dead, because you have someone who's deceased, right, and their body is left behind, and it's an embarrassment for them. You should help and bury them. You should make sure that their family has what they need to bury someone. Burial it's a big honor, because they can't pay you back for honoring, right? They honor that the deceased person can't pay you back for the honor you give them. It's a real honor, a real kindness, and you're realizing that what's left behind is the body. The body is a shell. Like when you and I look at someone, we see their body, and of course, but what do we care for? What do we feel like when I say that I care for people who come here? So certainly I see them, I care for them physically, but what makes me feel for them is their personality, who they are, right? The good and the bad, the struggles of their lives. Right? That's how people get close. That's gone when you die. When a person dies, that's part of your soul. Your personality leaves when your soul leaves. All that's left behind is the body, and it's that the body being left behind is like an embarrassment to the soul. So so therefore you have to bury someone. It's a big mitzvah, and here a Kohen is not allowed to do it. Right? That's it's sad. In fact, there's an interesting story that one of my teachers told me that I think it was in Baltimore. They made a new cemetery. Like I was once involved in Colorado when I lived there making a new cemetery, and there's a whole ritual you go through, and you have to fast half a day, and you walk around the area, and you say certain tehillim, certain psalms, and then you designate this area to be a holy place for burial. But normally, of course, a Kohen cannot fulfill the mitzvah of burying the dead, because he's only allowed to be involved with his immediate family. Right, so they tell the story that in Baltimore they made this cemetery, and a word came out that somebody had died. So he got, so to speak, got the honor of being the first person to be buried in the cemetery. It's an honor that probably none of us really want, but in any case, he was the first one to be buried. So they all go down to the cemetery to bury him, and they see that somebody dug the grave. Now that wasn't normal, because you pay someone to dig the grave. You don't dig a grave. Right? I mean, how many of us have ever dug a grave? Right? You go there, and the Chevra Kadisha or the organization will dig a grave. Right? So they go there, and it's already done. So how did that happen? So they find out that there was this man in the city who knew that there was a new cemetery, and he saw that somebody died, and he wanted to do a mitzvah, the mitzvah of burying the dead, but he's a Kohen. And he can't go into a cemetery. But this cemetery has no dead bodies in it, so he can go in. So he went in and he dug the grave. So the first person could be buried. He was able to do the mitzvah, right? Otherwise, he could never do it. So that's the story there. Then here the Kohanim, they can't do it. That's what it's saying here, right? And then it goes on as to who he can become involved with the dead. Like it has here his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and so forth. Right?
Sorry. So he can help his virgin sister. What about a brother who is unmarried?
No, a brother he also can. But a virgin sister doesn't literally mean a virgin. It means unmarried.
Yes.
Because as a sister gets married, she's part of a different household now.
No.
But a brother is still part of that household. Okay? Now, then it goes into this section where it talks about you should not make a bald spot on your head, and you shouldn't shave the edge of your beard, and you shouldn't cut yourself. They shall be holy to their God, and they shall not disgrace the name of their God. Right? So on the one hand, it's true, a Kohen shouldn't do this, but actually these laws now are for everyone. And why would somebody go and make if someone dies, right, and they go and make a bald spot on their head, or they cut themselves? That's what it's saying here. You can't do this. Or they shave. Why would somebody cut themselves because someone died, or make a bald spot? So the commentaries tell us that this was a pagan response to death. In other words, when someone died, in order to help them feel the pain, they would do things to themselves to feel pain. So they would feel it. They would. It's like they'd say with some of the Hindus. It used to be that if a man died, they would burn his body. Right? They would. That's how they did. They didn't necessarily bury, so they would use a fire, and sometimes the wife would jump into the fire because she was feeling pain. She'd die. Right, but that was what some things they do. People have this feeling of, if someone's dead, I want to feel the pain, and their understanding is that they do it physically, so they cut themselves or they tear their hair out. Now, so the Torah tells us you can't do that. That's pagan. That's not a right way of responding. There's no idea that you have to feel pain because somebody else died. Right? You feel pain in your heart for somebody. You don't feel pain on your body. So it says not to do that. And then it tells you who a Kohen can marry, and right, it says they shall not marry a woman who is a harlot or has been desecrated, and shall not marry a woman who has been divorced by her husband, for each one is holy to God. So here we have to understand something. Right? I'll tell you a few other rules of the Kohen, but I want to include it to the one where a Kohen can't marry a divorced woman. There's also a rule that a Kohen who's deformed in any way, he has some type of disability, is not allowed to practice as a Kohen in the temple. That even something as small as having one eyebrow. Right? People have one brow all the way across. If he has one eyebrow, he can't practice in the temple. If he has one arm shorter than the other, he can't practice in the temple. And lots of people do. Right? That's very common. If he's disabled, he can't practice. So you say it's like illegal. How do you do such a thing? How do you have a Torah that tells you that a Kohen, who God created, who's born with, let's say, one leg shorter than the other one, and that's how he lives his life, he's a Kohen and he can't practice. He hasn't done anything wrong. And are people with disabilities worse? Is there something wrong with them? And so let's take it even further. How about he can't marry a divorced woman? Is there something wrong with a divorced woman? Maybe her husband was a meshuggah. Maybe the only thing wrong with the divorced woman is that she married a guy who lied to her, and he said that he was, a nice guy, or he was, going to live in Israel, or he had a career, and he turns out to have nothing, and he lies to her, and so she divorces him. Maybe she divorces him because he's insane. Maybe she divorces him because he's criminal. She didn't know. Her only mistake was she married him. Right? So why should a Kohen not be able to marry her? What's wrong with her? Right? It doesn't, and it's not that because she was married to someone, right? Because he can marry a woman whose husband dies, right? So it's not like she has to be a virgin. It has to be they can't marry a woman who was divorced. So what is the Torah telling us about disabled people and divorced women? So how I understand this is that what the Torah is telling us is not that God believes that there's something wrong with divorced women and there's something wrong with people with disabilities. But God is saying that people do. That people are like that, not God. God knows that, if a woman marries a guy who's a criminal, that there's nothing wrong with her to divorce him. She's probably a lovely woman who's just made the mistake of marrying the wrong man. If a man who's a Kohen and he's got one leg shorter than the other, right, because he was born that way, how can he hold it against him? There's nothing wrong with that person. God knows that. God is not a bigot. These things are not, right? But God also understands that human beings are that way. And human beings look at things differently. And if you have to understand the role of the Kohen. The Kohen, to the average Jew, represented God. But you know how sometimes we look at a rabbi that way. We see a rabbi represents God, and then when a rabbi does something wrong, when he's, let's say, he's in the newspaper for doing something he shouldn't do, right, and getting in trouble, right? We don't just say that rabbi's a bad guy. It affects our whole belief in the Torah. It affects everything we believe about Judaism. Even, right, that person did that. Even though the rabbi will tell you, I'm not doing this in the name of Judaism. I'm a flawed person. I did it. I did it. I hurt someone, I stole, I didn't pay a bill, I cheated someone, I attacked someone, I'm a pornographer, whatever it is that the guy did. He's not doing it in the name of Judaism. But nevertheless, that's the feeling we get. When we see that, it affects our belief in Judaism, because we see them as representative of Judaism. And when they're fakes, when they're not really who they claim to be, it affects us. Right? Now, in that case, the person did something wrong. In the case of a divorced woman or a case of a person who has a deformity, they don't do anything wrong. They've done nothing wrong. But what we're dealing with here is the Torah says that the Jewish world looks at Kohanim as almost an extension of God. The Kohen's job is sort of to be the one who helps facilitate our certain activities that we have with God. They're not a middleman, but they are the facilitators. So to the people who go to the temple, they see a person dressed in a uniform, which a Kohen wore, very holy, living his life very holy, right? And if that person has, let's say, a limp, right, or something wrong with him, it subconsciously affects us to believe that there's something wrong with the religion that he's practicing, even though it's wrong. But people are like that. The same thing with a divorced woman. Today, nobody thinks twice about a divorced woman. But when I was a kid, it made no difference why a woman got divorced. People looked at her funny, right? She could get divorced because her husband was a criminal. Her husband beat her. Her husband, you can come up with the most extreme case you want. It made no difference. People talked about her. And she was this divorced woman. From that on, she's loose. She's difficult. Whatever it is. And none of it's true. But people were like that. That's what it was like back 50 years ago, when it was rare to have a divorced person. But that was what you said. It wasn't the man that people faulted. It was always the woman. And it was wrong. It was wrong. It wasn't true. But that's how people were, and it was even more so in the past. So the Torah is telling us is that we need to educate people not to be bigots and not to make assumptions and not to treat divorced women badly and not to treat people with disabilities badly. We have to teach them that. But until they understand that, the Kohen has these restrictions because that's how the world is. And the Kohen has to look perfect. He has to be perfect, because we see him as an extension of Judaism. And by doing that, if he doesn't look perfect, so let's try to update this a bit. When look in let's say in the United States at the government, you have senators, you have congressmen, you have the president, right? The youngest president was in his 40s, right? I think Kennedy was the youngest. Maybe Obama's the next one, but this was young, right? Most of these presidents are old. But you ever notice that presidents, senators, congressmen, probably even here with our people, they're all slim, they're athletic looking, they dress nicely, they've got hair, they're not bald, right? When everyone else their age is overweight, right, and is going bald, these guys are not. Why is that? Is it because like there's something God created them to be a politician? No. They know. These guys know that if they're 40 pounds overweight, they're not going to get elected. And it has nothing to do with who they are. It has nothing to do with their abilities. But they know that people look at them, if they're obese, people are going to say, that's a dummy. That's what a dummy is. And look at him. He can't even take care of himself. He's going to run my country. He can't even, look at him. Right? And there's nothing wrong with this person, and he can run your country. But that's how people are. Right? So you see that politicians, people in the public eye, right, they're always working very diligently to look good, even though it has nothing to do with what they do. Nothing at all. We should have more interest in, even if you don't even think it plays a big role, but we should be more interest in how how moral a person is than how they look. And even that, I don't know if it has to be. But to say that somebody has to look good in order to be a politician, or to look good to be a rabbi, or look good to be a public figure, is ridiculous. But we all know it. I tell people all the time, when I meet with people, I say that, if the case applies, I say, you're about to start your career. You're a young person. I said, and I know I've lived with this my whole life. If you are going to stay overweight, it will affect your career. I don't care how good you are at what you do, people are going to treat you differently. If you're 40, 50 pounds overweight, people are going to consider you stupid, lazy, not a hard worker, and you could be the hardest worker, the most intelligent person, and not at all lazy, and people still are going to think it. But if you lose weight, people will change their attitude. It doesn't make it right. It's not right, but it's real. It's true. And that's what it is with the Kohanim. That's the point. It's not right. So you want to ask, then why does the Torah do it? Because it's not right. The Torah seems to encourage it. It doesn't encourage it. It's real. When it comes to a Kohen plays a role. He has to appear perfect because people will look at him in that way. And therefore, it's a necessity that happens. That's a very important point. It's not that the Torah is telling us that it's a good thing. It's a bad thing. And they tell us over and over and over in the Torah not to judge people that way. But it's also realistic, and it knows there is a certain amount of it that we do, even if we might think not. So that's why the Torah says this. The Torah is not telling you that a divorced woman is bad. And the Torah is not telling you that a person who's got one arm shorter than the other is bad, or there's something less about them, or they're wrong, or the way God created them that way because they're bad people. It's just not true. The Torah doesn't say it, and we're not supposed to say it. But the Torah is just being realistic that people do that, and that's why it has all of these rules like that for a Kohen.
It seems a natural following in a way, that if you cannot bring a sacrifice without a blemish, then the person who produces the sacrifice to God should also be without blemish.
Well, I can understand the concept, but still, if you look at the side of the Kohen, here a guy's born into a family of Kohanim, right? He has all the restrictions of being a Kohen, but because he lost a finger, he can't practice. But he still has to have all the restrictions, but he still can't do it. He said, what's wrong with him? Nothing. Right? Look from his point of view. I understand what you're saying, and that's exactly the idea, but that's where it comes from. Right, and now this whole idea goes on. If you look in 675, right, it says that Hashem spoke to Moshe, speak to Aaron, saying, any man of your offspring throughout their generations in whom there will be a blemish shall not come near to offer the food for his God. Any man whom there is a blemish shall not approach. A man who is blind or lame, whose nose has no bridge, or has one limb longer than the other, or in whom there has been a broken leg, a broken arm, or one who has abnormally long eyebrows, or a membrane on his eyes, or a blemish in his eye, or a dry skin eruption, or moist skin eruption, or crushed testicles. Any man from among the offspring of Aaron the Kohen who is a blemish shall not approach. Right, just what I said. And you'd have to say, like, this would be, in Canada, it would be illegal. You can't do that. You can't treat a disabled person. But the Torah is not telling you that that's what it wants you to do. It's relating to the fact that that's what how people are. And at the same time, the Torah teaches us not to be that way. But it's being realistic. Okay, now, if you look on 677, the new paragraph there, 22, it says, Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Emor. Hashem says to Moshe, speak to Aaron and his sons, that they will withdraw from the holies of the children of Israel, which they will sanctify to me, so as not to desecrate my holy name. I am Hashem. Right, and then he goes on. Now here, it's an interesting thing, because in the same sentence, God talks about two sides of the same coin. He says, you tell the Kohanim they have certain rules they have to follow. Right? And later on in the Torah, it says the same thing for everybody. But there's two rules you have to these rules you have to follow. But one thing you have to know, that when you do, there are certain things that you're going to do which will be an embarrassment to me. If you act in a certain way that embarrasses Judaism, then that's called a chilul Hashem, a desecration of the name of God. Like if you find a person, it's in the papers, right? These things happen. You have a Jewish person who gets caught involved with some type of illicit sexual thing, pornography or prostitution, and you get a person with a yarmulke, right? And he gets arrested, and it's in the paper, and you know the person, or you know of the person, right? What does that do? What it does is that not only is it an embarrassment to that person, but it's an embarrassment to Judaism, because that person represents themselves as religious. So how can you be religious and do that? Now, of course, we know how you can be religious and do anything, because people are people, right? People have desires, and people have illnesses, and people do things they shouldn't. That it happens. But we say, that's what we say. And as soon as we say, how can a religious person do that? We are no longer saying that it's that person's problem. Now it's Judaism's problem. And that's a desecration of the name of God. That's what they're doing. So therefore, when a person does something wrong, they desecrate the name of God. So he says here, don't desecrate the name of God, but make holy my name. Being holy my name is the other side of the coin. That is where a situation arises. Like, let's say you go to the store, and the woman at the store gives you the wrong change, gives you too much, right? So we won't go into if you have to. You don't have to tell her, right? But for now. But the question is, what happens when you do? Let's say you're holding in your hand, you gave her a $10 bill, she thought it was a $100 bill, you bought $12 worth of groceries, she gives you back $88, right? So you say, wow, or it doesn't really add up right? So you gave her a $20 bill, and she gives you back $88 instead of $8. So you go to, so $88 is money, right? So you go to that woman and you say, you gave me the wrong change, and it's not right for me to take it. My belief is I can't steal. It's not appropriate, so I'm giving you the money back. So what you have done is that you may not have stolen if you took the money. You may or may not, depending on the details. But you certainly did a Kiddush Hashem. You sanctified the name of God, because this person who are you giving the money back to would have had to pay for that money, right? When they close out their register, they have to pay. So they would have lost that money. So now that person says, see this person, I made a mistake. This person could have walked away, I never would have known. But they didn't. And they did it because they're Jewish. And therefore they say the religion played a role. And that's making a positive statement about Judaism. That's making holy my name. So here in the same sentences tells you, don't desecrate my name and make holy my name. Well, most people would think, if I don't desecrate your name, I'm making holy. If I'm making holy, I'm not desecrating. Right? So why have both? Right, so the answer is a very important thing, and this is something that we should never forget, is that when we want to make holy God's name, we should not desecrate His name at the same time. What do I mean? So I'll give you an example I talked about in shul before, and we probably talked about here. Go on a Friday afternoon to Chabad Plaza over there, Chabad Gate Plaza. Go over there at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. Everybody's out shopping. They want to get stuff from the bakery. Maybe you want to grab something for lunch. They want to pick up a couple of things at the store. They want to go into the fruit store and buy flowers, maybe a Jewish paper, right? So it's not a big place, right? The whole thing's not that big. But people can constantly will park in the fire lane, right? And they park in the fire lane to such an extent you can't even get out. Mm-hmm. You'll have a line of cars because this guy is so important he can't go 10 feet. It's a small plaza. 10 feet, park in a parking spot. He has to park in the fire lane. And when they park, someone goes, or even if they're sitting in the fire lane because somebody went in, but parking in the fire lane is really the issue. Now, someone does that. So you say, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just a minute. I got to run in and buy my wife flowers for Shabbos. So he's doing a nice thing. He's making his wife happy. He's honoring her. He's honoring Shabbos. It's a wonderful thing he's doing. But at whose cost? At my cost. I can't get out of here now. I'm going to scratch my car. I'm going to have to walk between these cars. Whatever the case is, your parking here is not a good thing. So you think you're making God's name holy because you're buying your wife flowers for Shabbos, right? But you're not. You're desecrating the name of God, because I see you get out of your car with your yarmulke and you run in when the sign clearly says not to park there, when everybody knows the kind of problems that happen, but you say, I'm only there for a minute. And then when you get into a conversation with your neighbor and you decide to, since I'm here, I'll pick up a couple of peaches, and then you decide that you see that your kid is down at the other end getting a pizza, so you're going to go get him and bring him home with you, and your car's sitting there for 15 minutes, and people are backed up and hard to get through, right? You are desecrating the name of God. So the same act that you think is making holy the name of God is desecrating the name of God, and that's why he says both in one sentence. Because we have to make sure when we do a good deed that it's really a good thing. We can't do a good deed in a bad way. Right? You can't steal to give to the poor. Right? Like Robin Hood. That doesn't exist. No such thing. You can't steal money from one person and give money to the poor. That's not good. You can't go to buy flowers or cake or a Jewish paper by parking in a fire lane when everybody also has to do stuff for Shabbos, when you could just walk 10 feet from your spot. You do that, you're just desecrating the name of God while you think you're doing a good thing. That's why they do it, and that's a very important thing. And that is probably indicative. That symbol, right? Not necessarily parking at Sue's. It could be many other things. You can see the same thing at Sobeys, right, or many other places. Those are indicative of the most common ways that the outside world looks at Jews, and even how the other Jews look at observant Jews, because they see us do these things, where we park in such a way, or we don't care, or we're rude, or we butt in line, or we go in the line that says 10 items, and you've got 20 items, and you count them in a funny way. Well, I have 20 items, but 5 are soup, so that's only 1. And 6 of them are bottles of pop. That's only 1. So I only have 6 items total. So what's the big deal? Right? We rationalize. And the guy behind you who's got 1 item who has to wait for you to go through all of your stuff, and the store made that aisle for the guy to be able to go through, because now because when you abuse it, now he's not going to come to the store anymore. He's going to go to Max, where he only has to wait in line for a second, because nobody does all their shopping at Max. So he's going to do that. Now the store is going to lose out after they went out of their way to make a line, because you decided, I'm too important to wait in line with everybody else. I'm going to go in this line, right, because I got to get home for Shabbos. Well, what about everybody else? They don't have to get home for Shabbos. They don't have things that they have to do. It's the same idea, right? This happens in our lives in many, many ways. And it's extremely important, because if you're the one standing behind that person, being polite Canadians, you probably aren't going to say anything. But you're going to think it, and you might mumble it, and you might say it to the person behind you, but that is an example where you think you're doing a good deed, and you're not. You're doing a bad thing. It's a wrong thing. And that's there. You can see it in any shop we go to, any place you go, anything that we do on the outside. If you think no one's going to care, no one's going to notice, I promise you it's not true. It's not true. They all know. I see it in shul even, when people will complain to me that there's noise in shul from babies. People bring babies in. So the same people, when they have their child and they bring their child into the shul, and they make a noise, or they laugh, or they say something, the mother thinks it's cute. But when it's someone else's child, they don't think it's cute. Right? It's only cute when it's your child. But everyone thinks when my child is cute. And also everyone thinks you're wrong, no matter who you are, and no matter how cute your child is. It's not. Nobody believes it. Nobody at all wants it. But we all think that, oh, my child's different. They're cute. Right? The fact is that you're doing the exact same thing. You think, oh, there's an idea. I should bring my children to shul. They should absorb the holiness of the shul. They should learn. But if your child can't sit in the shul quietly, then they shouldn't be brought into the shul. And so if they're going to come into the shul and make noise, right? And if you think that everybody likes it, you're wrong. That's desecrating God's name. You think you're doing a good thing, and you're not doing a good thing. So that's really how it works. It's not a question that Jews don't care about others. It's that we don't think about it. We're insensitive. We say, like, I'm not such an important person. I'm going to park for a minute here and I'll go. But then I don't end up for a minute. Even if I do park a minute, I shouldn't be there. Like, there are lots of times that I'll go to Sue's and I'll want to park in front, and there's even nobody there. Like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning on the way to shul, and I'll want to buy, I don't know, milk for everybody, or I want to buy something, and there's not 3 cars. I still am not going to let myself park on that spot in front of the place, even though there's nobody there to say anything, right? Because it's just wrong. You can't do those things, right? That's all. Yes?
Rabbi, would you say something to somebody? Maybe not you, but is it okay for other people to say to them?
Well, when to reprimand someone, you have to believe that you can make a difference. So,
well, let's say like somebody, blocking the way. That's pretty black and white. He's blocking the way. Nobody.
Right. No one can get in or out now.
Yeah. Okay,
right. So clearly, somebody should tell the person, look behind you. You look at that. There's 10 cars trying to get out, and you're sitting here, right? Or you're in there. You're in the store talking. There are 10 people who can't get out, and nobody can get in. I'm sure the plaza does not want a plaza where nobody can get in or out, and it's all because of your car. So certainly you can say it. But if you're, because you want to stop the problem. But if your goal is to stop this person from doing it, just going over and yelling at them, it won't work. You'll see by their reaction to you. If you know the person and you think that you can say something that will cause them not to do it again, so that's you have an obligation. But if you don't know them, then it's just like if you're a cigarette smoker, and if you were in your time, you used to smoke cigarettes, and someone would come up to you and say, "How can you smoke cigarettes? It's going to kill you." You don't listen. You don't listen to them, right? Why? Because who are you? I don't know you. You don't care about me. You know nothing about me. Well, why are you saying this to me? For all I know, you're worse. Right? But if somebody you know and you care, and you know they care about you, they like you, they know they care about you, and they go to you and you're smoking and they say, "Really, can't you quit? Can't we do something to help you quit? It's going to kill you, and you know I love you. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to get sick." You'll listen to them because you know they care about you. That's the important point. If somebody shows that they care, like I tell people all the time, if you're in shul and you want to, and somebody anywhere, but I say shul, but if you anywhere you are, if you have a need to reprimand someone for doing something wrong, right? If you don't know that person's spouse's name and their children's name, then I'm telling you, you don't know them well enough to do it. That's at least a sign, right? If you don't know that much, then it's not going to do you any good. Now, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't reprimand people. There's a mitzvah to reprimand people, but that mitzvah is goal-oriented. That is to get the person to change, not to make you feel better.
What about, like you say you're doing a chilul Hashem, like, is that okay to say something like?
Sure, if you think that you can change them, if you have a reason to believe it. But otherwise, you're just going to get them upset and continue doing what they're doing. Just like with the cigarette smoker. I had it myself. When I was a teenager and I smoked, people would say, "You shouldn't do it." I didn't know, strangers. It had no effect on me. Maybe it even made me want to do it. But if somebody cared about me, that would stop it.
But sometimes, like let's say you blocked, and you're in a rush, and then you're angry, and you say, "Look, please move your car."
Well, that's different, like I said before. If they're actually in the act of blocking people, so then certainly you want to get them to not block them. You're not going to necessarily convince them not to do it the next time. But this time you're going to get them to move. So there, you can go in and say to them, "Excuse me, do you realize what you're doing? By your parking here so that you can go in and get the nice fresh fruit, all of these people are stuck in the parking lot because of you. Right? Could you maybe move your car and then come back in?" So then you see, you're not dealing with getting them to change their character. You're getting them to stop it immediately, and then the next time they may do it again. Right? So there, if you know them and you care for them, you can come to them not when they're doing it and say something. It's like in marriage counseling. I tell people all the time: if you have a problem with your spouse, there's something they're doing, don't tell them when you're fighting. It won't work. Tell them when you're getting along, when everything's good. Then say, "Listen, I want to talk to you about something. This has been, I see that you're doing this, and if I understand right, it's really not good." Right? Then they'll listen to you. But if you're fighting with them, you're going to get nowhere. Right? It's the same idea. Okay? Let's move on a bit.
Rabbi, I parked in the Governor's parking place today.
What?
I parked in the Governor's parking place today.
In the Gabbai, so I'm going to tell him. Well, we have that's a perfect example of this, because I have a spot here, right, and I didn't ask for it. I didn't tell them they have to give me one, right? But as soon as the shul decided that the rabbi should have a parking spot with a sign, so that means then if you park there, you're showing disrespect. That's what it means. I said, you might not be disrespectful. You might be my cousin, right? And you like me, and you want me to have this job, right? But that's what it means, right? So what happens now? Before I didn't have a spot, so I don't have to care. If I come and there's no place near here, I'll park in the back like everyone else. What do I care? I walk around the building. It takes an extra minute. But now that I have a spot and someone takes that spot, right, now I got to deal with it, right? And then when I say something to them, I feel bad the whole day. Right? It's worse. So what do I do now? Every morning. So I come here and I have to put out these rubber things in the spot. Whenever I leave, I put them out so that they don't do it. But when you have the people coming for the school in the morning, every morning they were doing it, and they'd argue with me. So it's, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I got those rubber road things, and I pull my car out, I stop the car, I get out, I put them down, and I leave.
The pylons?
Yeah, and then I come back, I move them away, and I park. Right? It's a pain to have to do it, but because they're showing a lack of respect when they do that, right? So but let's take it from the point of view of the person. They're for the most part, I can't say everyone, but for the most part, I'm going to presume they have no idea who I even am, right? They have no idea. So they're not necessarily disrespecting me. They're saying, I'm bringing in my kid, the spot's empty, I'm only here for a minute, so I'll go in, I'll park, I'll bring in my kid and come back out. That's what they're probably saying to themselves. Just like the person who parks in front of the store. Right? But what's happening is that I'm in and out all the time. I need to be able to get out of here quickly and come in quickly. Somebody needs me. I've got to go. I've got to be here, right? And so therefore, there never is a time where they can presume I won't be here. And whenever they say I'm only there for a minute, even if they are just for a minute, that's the minute I come. That's what happens. So it's always a problem like that. So it's just, and it's the same idea because they're not thinking I'm going to park here and show the rabbi. They're not thinking that. But that's what it says, because everybody else who sees it says, look what a disrespect that is. You don't park in the rabbi spot like that. And so that's, like, but sometimes when the gabai's here, and he's not going to be here during the day, right? So it's not a big deal. But for sure he's not going to. And when he does, he doesn't expect that. But I know that when he is going to be here, like during davening time, that sometimes if the same car keeps doing it, he just parks behind him. And then they have to come to him. So I tried that once. The same car kept taking my spot, so I just parked my car behind them and leave. I go inside the shul, right? So then they have to come and find me.
Yeah.
And so one time, one came to find me, and they said, what did you park behind me for? And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that you were the rabbi. Right? And I'm the rabbi, right? But I said, I don't realize you're the rabbi. So that took care of that one. Then they don't do it so fast. But a couple of times, I'll come out and they're trying to get out without having to come in and tell me. So they'll like do it. You have what they call a 3-point turn. You learn when you get your license. 3 times you go. They would do like 10. Because they don't have enough space. But they don't want to come talk to me like they think I'm a tough guy or something. So they'll take an hour to go around in a circle. So.
Well, that's a good idea, because somebody parked in the disabled parking. So I should have rather parked in the disabled parking.
Yeah, well, be careful with that one. That one you can get a ticket. Right, and that's one thing is have to come talk to me. Other thing is to pay $400.
If you've got that car, if you got there, well, then you're okay.
Yeah, then you can park there all day. Okay. All right, when we get to 683, and 683, I was talking about the holidays. Right in the middle, it goes to all the holidays. Right? You have Pesach, you have Sfiras HaOmer, you have Rosh Hashanah. But I want to talk about the holiday of Shavuos, which is on 684 and 685. If we begin with verse 15, and we're going to read together, it says as follows. See if we have some time. Yeah. It says, you shall count for yourselves from the hour of the rest day until the day when you bring the Omer. So this is the mitzvah Sfiras Omer that we're doing now. 7 weeks, they shall be complete. So you count 7 full weeks from the second day of Passover, and that is the holiday of Shavuos. Right? When those 7 weeks end, the holiday of Shavuos begins. Right? Until the morrow of the 7th week, you shall count 50 days, and you shall offer a new meal offering. Right? And it goes on talking about that. And then if you turn on 686 and 87 at the top, it says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not remove completely the corners of your field as you reap, and you shall not gather the gleanings of your harvest for the poor. And then it says the holidays again. Right? Speak to the children of Israel, and you have all these holidays. So here's what's going on. You've got a holiday. Then you have sort of like a commercial before the next holiday. It says, okay, when you go plow your field, make sure you leave for the poor. Holiday, and holiday. Like, what's it doing there? It's like God'd say, well, I have this mitzvah, I don't know where to stick it. Where am I going to put this mitzvah? So they took a vote and they decided they're going to stick it in the middle of this. Like, it's got nothing to do with this. What's it doing here? We're talking about holidays, and you're telling me I have to make sure the poor. Now, what is it saying? That it says when you own a field and you're going to gather in the, let's say, the fruit or vegetable from your field, there's a number of laws. One of them is that anything that's in the corners of your fields belongs to the poor. Anything that you forget, like after you've gone through it and you left it behind, belongs to the poor. Right? There are a number of different things that God says that, well, I'm going to give you. You want to be a farmer, you want to grow vegetables and fruits, that's fine, but you have to do some things for the poor, God tells us. So that's some of it, right? It's an important mitzvah. But what's it doing in the middle of the holidays? Tell me that when you're teaching me agriculture. What are you telling me here? Right? We have a whole section on agriculture. So the point is here is the following. You want to have the holiday of Shavuos. Right? Holiday of Shavuos is when we get the Torah. Right? And it's a similar message to what we said before. When you want to celebrate the holiday of Shavuos, that takes the dignity of the man and makes us holy, right? Because we have the Torah from God. Because you have to remember, before you can go there and you can start dealing with these esoteric ideas and Kabbalah and deep ideas in Judaism, which we get in the Torah, before you do that, you better make sure you take care of the poor people. Right? You're not going to be a holy person if you ignore the poor people. If you have poor people who are starving in the streets, you can study Torah all day, you're not going to be holy. You have to make sure that you take care of people, then you come study with me. Then you come learn this. I don't mean that there's not a mitzvah to learn Torah all the time, there is. But also, you can't neglect the needs of people. That is to say, it's the same idea. You can't be spiritual by not caring for the needs of other people. You know why? Because my physical needs are my physical needs. Your physical needs are my spiritual needs. Right? When I'm hungry, that's physical. I'll go out and get food. When you're hungry, and I give you food, that's my spiritual. That gives me spiritual things. Right? So I can't be spiritual if you're hungry. I have to feed you, then I'm spiritual. I can't sit and think about Torah and you're starving in the streets, or you need medicine, you need help. I can't do that. I have to make sure I help you before I'm able to go and be, be in the world of spirituality. That's what it's telling us. You can't sit up on a mountain and meditate about spiritual things while there are people at the bottom of the mountain who are starving to death. You can't do it. It doesn't work. That's not what God wants. So that's the message that he tells us, that you have to make sure you know. That's why in the middle of the holidays, it tells you the laws of taking care of the poor. Because you can't celebrate holidays like that. I send out, twice a year, I send out a letter to raise money for the poor in our shul. There are people in our shul who are needy, and there are people in the community who are needy. And thank God our shul raises a lot more money than you'd think. And because most people in our shul don't even have savings accounts. And we don't have a wealthy, we have some, but we have very few people of means in our shul. Most of the people are living off their paychecks, and that's how they live. And yet, when it comes time before the holidays, I send out a notice and people give us money. It's bad enough I got to spend all this money for Pesach, but on top of it, I have to make sure you have money for Pesach. Right? So therefore, I send out these letters, and people not only spend all that money for themselves for Pesach, but they give me money to give away. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars I get, right? Not from one person, but from lots of people. I end up with a lot of money to give away, and it helps so that everybody has money for matzah and for Pesach and for Rosh Hashanah when I do it. And the idea of doing that is that there's a statement from the Rambam, where the Rambam talks about Yom Tov, about holidays, and he says that if you celebrate Yom Tov and you have your big meal, right, which you're supposed to have a nice meal on Yom Tov on a holiday, but you don't have any poor people at your table, then you are just filling your stomach. That's all you're doing. You're just eating. But if you have poor people at your table when you have your Yom Tov meal, then you're celebrating God. That's celebration. He says it, so of course it doesn't mean literally you have to always have poor people at your table, but you have to take care of them. And if it means you have them at your table, then you have them at your table. But you have to take care of them. All right, that's the idea of what he's telling us. You can't celebrate a holiday until the people are taken care of. Right? Otherwise, you're just eating. Big deal. Everybody has to eat, so you're eating. You're not doing anything holy. You're not celebrating your religious beliefs. You're not celebrating a holiday. You're eating. You want to help the poor. Now you're celebrating your holiday. So that the Rambam says that.
When do you collect money for the poor?
I do it before Rosh Hashanah, and then I do it before Pesach, before Purim, right? And then I do it again before Pesach. But the Purim and Pesach one is often one. I don't usually get twice from the same people. I just get different people giving. Because people, for Purim, you're supposed to do it, and I give away enough money that I tell people, there's enough money here, and I hope you'll use it for Pesach. And then I'll get more for Pesach. So, and before Rosh Hashanah I do it, because people, in our world, it's a very tough time, because you have to have money for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, right? And school tuitions then, memberships in shuls then, all of this. If you're living off your paycheck, it's affecting you very strongly at that time. If you have a savings, so you take it out and you pay it back over the year. You pay over time. But otherwise, it's going to be a big bump or a big hit to you. So we give out money then too.
So this is sort of the idea about why men come to shul at Shacharis and ask for money.
Yeah, see, why they come to shul to do it is because they know that's where we are. And there's an idea that when you pray, you should give charity. Right? You should care for others. So they come around, right? That's what they do. Sometimes it's as much as I can appreciate their need and I support them, it's a bit much. Sometimes you'll get 10 people in an hour. That's hard, right? That's hard. Like before I'll come, when I remember, so Sundays I always forget. I'm still wearing especially this time of year, I'm wearing my Shabbos clothes still. It's so late. But I try to make sure I stick 6, 7 loonies in my pocket in the morning when I come. I give each guy $1 or $2, depending on it, right? Like sometimes there'll be so many that I won't have any more. Like they come to your house sometimes too. So a guy comes to my house and he's giving me the whole story why I should give him, more money than I might normally give. And I said to him, I'd love to give you more than I'd like to give, but you have to realize, and this was just this week, you were the 10th person this week. This day, today, Sunday afternoon, you're the 10th person I've had. If I give every one of you $20, that's $200 in one day. That's a lot of money. Not that I don't make money. I do make money, and I have to give charity. And $200 is much less than I have to give. But it's $200 today, and what about my priorities? Something is important to me. Maybe I want to give $1,000 to the poor, or to this institution, or that institution, rather than everyone who comes to my door. So someone comes to my door, you give them, but you don't have to give them a lot. You give them, but they want more. And I just this week I had 10 people come. Right? It adds up. You give them $18, $36, $10. It adds up. And a few hundred. I always say that it's cheaper for me to take my wife shopping on Sundays than it is to stay home. But it's a bigger mitzvah to stay home. Right? Taking my wife shopping is also a mitzvah, but to give out tzedakah is also. So I think we have to stop.